What if I told you that every night, when you lay your head on your pillow, you're actually stepping into the most powerful manifestation chamber known to humanity? That while your body rests, your subconscious mind becomes a divine workshop where miracles are not just possible but inevitable. Tonight, something extraordinary is about to happen. As you prepare for sleep, you're not simply ending another day. You're entering what Joseph Murphy called a sacred space prepared by infinite spirit, where the very gates of wealth swing open and divine provision flows without a single obstruction. Has this ever happened to you? You've gone to bed worried about money, stressed about bills, anxious about your financial future, only to wake up with an inexplicable sense of peace, or perhaps even discover an unexpected opportunity waiting in your inbox. This isn't coincidence. This is spiritual law in action. While the world sleeps, while your conscious mind finally quiets its endless chatter of doubt and limitation, your subconscious becomes what I like to call the divine receiver, completely open, utterly receptive, and perfectly aligned with the frequency of abundance that governs the entire universe. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. You see, most people approach sleep as merely a biological necessity, a time for physical restoration. But what you're about to discover might surprise you. Sleep is actually your most sacred appointment with wealth itself. Not the kind of wealth that comes through grinding and striving, but the effortless abundance that flows when you align with spiritual law. Tonight, we're going to explore how ancient wisdom meets modern manifestation, how the simple act of listening to specific abundance affirmations while you sleep can literally reprogram your financial reality at the deepest level. We're talking about transforming not just your bank account, but your entire relationship with money, prosperity, and your own divine worth. The truth is, your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's imagined and what's real. It simply accepts whatever information you consistently feed it. And during those precious hours of sleep, when your logical mind stops interfering, when your doubts finally quiet down, that's when the magic happens. That's when wealth consciousness gets installed like software into the hard drive of your soul. Joseph Murphy understood this profound truth when he wrote about the power of the sleeping state to magnetize miracles. He knew that when you enter this holy appointment with the law of abundance, you're not just hoping for change. You're commanding it through the divine authority of your aligned subconscious mind. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share with you has the power to transform not just your sleep, but your entire financial destiny. We're about to dive deep into the sacred mechanics of overnight abundance, where every affirmation becomes a seed planted in the fertile soil of infinite possibility. If these abundance principles resonated with you, click that subscribe button and join our community of conscious creators. We're exploring these powerful truths together on this journey of transformation. If these revelations open something within you, I'd love to have you join our community of conscious creators. Think about this for a moment. You didn't stumble upon this message by accident. Your presence here right now at this exact moment in your life is part of what spiritual teachers call a divine pattern. There's something profound happening behind the scenes of your journey, something that goes far beyond mere coincidence or random chance. The fact that you're here listening to these words about abundance and transformation reveals that you're being guided toward a perfect realignment with universal law. Here's a hidden truth that most people never discover. Every delay you've experienced, Every financial setback that left you questioning your worth, every moment when prosperity seemed just out of reach, none of it was punishment. It was preparation. The universe has been orchestrating your readiness for this very moment of awakening. You see, Spirit has never withheld good from you, not once, not ever. All the supply you've been seeking, all the health you've been praying for, all the love and success that feels so distant, it's already completed in divine mind. It already bears your name. It's already vibrating toward you at frequencies beyond what your physical senses can detect. But here's where the real revelation begins to unfold. Your subconscious mind has been programmed by years of worldly conditioning to expect struggle, to anticipate scarcity, to brace for disappointment. These aren't your true thoughts. They're inherited patterns, learned behaviors, societal imprints that have created invisible barriers between you and your natural birthright of abundance. During sleep, something miraculous happens. These barriers begin to dissolve. Your conscious mind, with all its learned limitations and fearful projections, finally steps aside. Your subconscious becomes like fertile ground, ready to receive new seeds of possibility. And when you feed it the right vibrations, the right frequencies, the right spiritual truths during those sacred hours, transformation occurs at the deepest cellular level. The ancient mystics understood this process intimately. They knew that true manifestation doesn't happen through force or desperate effort, but through divine alignment. When you surrender into sleep while listening to abundance affirmations, you're not just hoping for change. You're participating in the very mechanics of creation itself. Your brain waves shift into theta and delta frequencies, the same states that shamans and spiritual masters have accessed for millennia to perform what the world calls miracles. In these states, your mind becomes incredibly receptive to new programming. Every word of abundance you hear begins to overwrite decades of scarcity programming. Every affirmation of wealth starts dissolving the invisible contracts you unknowingly signed with limitation. This isn't positive thinking or wishful imagination. This is sacred science. Neuroscience now confirms what spiritual teachers have known for centuries. That repetitive exposure to specific frequencies and affirmations during sleep can literally rewire your neural pathways, creating new thought patterns that naturally attract different outcomes. Now, I want to go even deeper into this transformation process, because understanding the mechanics behind overnight abundance programming will revolutionize not just how you sleep, but how you relate to money, success, and your own infinite potential. The impact of what happens during those 8 hours of divine programming extends far beyond the bedroom. It shapes your decisions, influences your actions, and ultimately determines the trajectory of your entire financial destiny. What's fascinating is that beneath all the surface turbulence of your financial life, the bills, the budgets, the banking alerts, there flows what spiritual masters have called the golden river of prosperity. This isn't metaphorical language. It's a living reality that exists beyond the physical realm. This river has been flowing beneath your life since the moment you were born, constant and unending, never diminished by any appearance of lack or struggle you might be experiencing. Most people live their entire lives walking on dry ground, completely unaware that just beneath their feet flows an infinite stream of divine abundance. They make decisions based on scarcity, create strategies rooted in fear, and exhaust themselves trying to squeeze water from stones, all while standing directly above the most abundant source of prosperity in existence. If you've recognized yourself in any part of this message, write "Awakening Now" in the comments. I'd love to know who's ready for this profound transformation of consciousness. The revelation that changes everything is this: you don't need to create abundance. You don't need to attract it, manifest it, or earn it through some complex spiritual gymnastics. You simply need to dip into what's already flowing. You need to step down from the harsh terrain of struggle and immerse yourself in the golden current that has been waiting for your recognition all along. During sleep, when your analytical mind stops building dams of doubt and limitation, this river naturally begins to surface. Your subconscious becomes like a divining rod, naturally drawn to the wealth frequency that's been calling your name. This is why some people wake up with million-dollar ideas, why breakthrough solutions appear in dreams, why morning inspiration often carries the seeds of life-changing transformation. But here's where the journey takes a profound turn. The barriers that have been blocking your abundance aren't external circumstances or economic conditions. They're internal thought patterns that have been programmed into your subconscious since childhood. These hidden barriers operate beneath your conscious awareness, silently, sabotaging your financial success without you even realizing it. Think about the messages you absorbed growing up. Money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are greedy. You have to work hard for every dollar. There's never enough to go around. These weren't just casual remarks. They were powerful programming statements that embedded themselves deep in your subconscious mind, creating what psychologists now call your money blueprint, the invisible architecture that determines your financial destiny. Subscribe now to continue your abundance journey with us. Each new meditation builds upon these foundations to help you fully activate your prosperity consciousness. The truly liberating insight is that these barriers aren't permanent. They're simply programs running in your mental operating system, and like any software, they can be updated, overwritten, or completely replaced. This is where the transformative power of sleep comes into play in ways most people never discover. During your waking hours, these limiting beliefs are protected by what neuroscientists call the critical faculty, that analytical part of your mind that filters and questions new information. When someone tells you abundance is your birthright, your critical faculty immediately jumps in with objections. If that's true, why am I struggling? Or, that sounds nice, but it's not realistic in today's economy. But behind the scenes, something remarkable happens when you fall asleep. That critical faculty, which has been vigilantly guarding your limiting beliefs, finally goes offline. The protective barrier between your conscious and subconscious mind dissolves, creating what Joseph Murphy called the perfect environment for mental alchemy, the transformation of leaden thoughts into golden consciousness. In this receptive state, your mind becomes impressionable in ways that simply aren't possible during waking hours. The subconscious, now unguarded and open, becomes fertile ground ready to receive new seeds of possibility. Abundance affirmations that might have been rejected during the day sink directly into the depths of your mind, taking root in places where no conscious resistance can reach them. This isn't just inspirational theory. Modern neuroscience has mapped the brainwave patterns that occur during different states of consciousness. During deep sleep, your brain produces delta waves, the slowest frequency, but with the highest amplitude. These powerful waves create the perfect conditions for what scientists call neural plasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. The impact of this process extends far beyond just feeling more positive about money. It literally rewires the neural pathways associated with abundance, success, and prosperity. Where there were once pathways of limitation and scarcity, new highways of possibility and opportunity begin to form. This cellular-level transformation changes not just what you think about wealth, but how you perceive opportunities, how you make financial decisions, and how naturally you allow abundance to flow into your life. What makes this approach so revolutionary is that it bypasses the conscious mind's resistance entirely. You don't have to convince yourself to believe new ideas about wealth. You don't have to win arguments with your inner critic. You simply allow these new programs to be installed while you sleep, much like your computer installs updates overnight while you're away from the keyboard. The journey to financial freedom isn't about forcing change through willpower. It's about removing the barriers that have been blocking what naturally wants to flow to you. It's about dissolving the dams of doubt that have been holding back your river of prosperity. And sleep provides the perfect environment for this dissolving process to occur effortlessly and naturally. If you're resonating with this deeper understanding of how your subconscious creates or blocks your financial reality, type dissolving barriers in the comments. I'm curious how many of you are ready to remove these hidden obstacles from your prosperity path. Now, I want to explore the fascinating science behind what makes sleep such a powerful catalyst for transformation. When you drift into slumber, your brain doesn't simply shut down. It shifts into entirely different operating modes that create the perfect environment for profound change. As consciousness begins to fade and sleep deepens, your brain waves gradually slow down, moving through specific frequencies that neuroscientists have mapped with remarkable precision. First comes alpha, that relaxed state between wakefulness and sleep, followed by theta, a dreamlike state of heightened creativity and intuition. Finally, your brain descends into delta waves, the slowest, deepest frequency where healing and regeneration accelerate. What makes these theta and delta states so extraordinary for abundance work is their unique receptivity. In these frequencies, the boundary between your conscious and subconscious mind becomes incredibly permeable. This isn't just spiritual theory. It's a measurable phenomenon that researchers have documented in sleep labs around the world. Your brain literally enters what scientists call a hypersuggestible state, where new information can be absorbed directly into your subconscious without the filtering, questioning, and resistance that occurs during waking hours. Think of it like the difference between trying to plant seeds in sun-baked clay versus rich, moist soil after a gentle rain. The same seeds, but vastly different results based on the receptivity of the ground. During sleep, your mind becomes that perfectly prepared soil, ready to nurture whatever seeds of prosperity consciousness are planted there. This is why Joseph Murphy emphasized the sacred science of sleep programming. He understood that affirmations heard during these theta and delta states aren't just positive thoughts floating through your awareness. They're actual programming commands being installed into your mental operating system at the deepest level. Every word of abundance you hear begins overwriting decades of scarcity programming, creating new neural pathways that fundamentally change how you perceive and interact with money. The revelations from modern neuroscience have validated what mystics have known for centuries. Research using advanced brain imaging techniques has shown that repetitive exposure to specific frequencies and affirmations during sleep literally rewires neural pathways. This process, known as neuroplasticity, allows your brain to form new connections and patterns that naturally attract different outcomes in your waking life. Behind the scenes of this mental rewiring, something even more profound is happening. Each affirmation isn't just changing your thoughts, it's altering the very frequency at which your energy field vibrates. Quantum physicists have demonstrated that everything in existence, including thoughts and emotions, operates at specific vibrational frequencies. Scarcity consciousness vibrates at a heavy, dense frequency that naturally repels abundance. Prosperity consciousness, on the other hand, vibrates at a higher, more refined frequency that naturally magnetizes wealth and opportunity. During those precious hours of sleep, when your conscious resistance is offline and your subconscious is fully receptive, these higher vibrational patterns can be embedded into your energy field with remarkable efficiency. It's like a spiritual tuning fork, gradually adjusting your personal frequency until it naturally resonates with the abundance that has been waiting for you all along. The impact of this vibrational shift extends far beyond just your financial circumstances. As your consciousness elevates through these nighttime downloads, you'll begin noticing subtle but profound changes in how opportunities find you, how solutions appear in your awareness, and how synchronicities multiply in your daily experience. This isn't wishful thinking or metaphysical speculation. The most cutting-edge research in fields like epigenetics and psychoneuroimmunology has shown that our thoughts and beliefs literally influence our physical reality down to the cellular level. The mindset shifts that occur during sleep programming don't just change how you feel about money, they alter the biochemical environment of your body, affecting everything from your stress hormones to your immune function to your decision-making capabilities. The journey of transformation that unfolds through this sacred science often surprises people with its elegance and efficiency. Instead of struggling for years with conscious techniques like visualization or affirmations that the waking mind often resists, sleep programming bypasses this resistance entirely. The changes that occur feel natural and effortless because they're happening at a level beyond conscious interference. It's as if the divine intelligence within you finally has unrestricted access to reprogram the limiting beliefs that have been holding you back. Each night becomes an opportunity for what spiritual masters call divine downloads, direct transmissions of prosperity consciousness that gradually replace the scarcity programming you've unknowingly been operating from. If you're beginning to sense the profound potential of these nighttime transformations, type "divine downloads activated" in the comments. I'm fascinated to connect with others who intuitively recognize the power of this sacred science. Now, I want to explore what might be the most profound paradigm shift in our understanding of abundance. What if prosperity isn't something you need to pursue, chase, or even manifest? What if it's already here, flowing beneath the surface of your life like an underground river of pure gold, waiting only for you to sink your bucket into its depths? If you found value in this meditation, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps others discover these life-changing principles. This golden river of prosperity isn't a poetic metaphor or wishful thinking. It's a living reality that exists beyond the physical realm, continuously flowing beneath the surface turbulence of your financial life. The bills, the budgets, the bank statements that seem to define your economic reality. This river has been flowing since the moment you were born, constant and unending, never diminished by any appearance of lack or struggle you might be experiencing. The hidden truth that transforms everything is this: most people spend their entire lives walking on dry ground, completely unaware that just beneath their feet flows an infinite stream of divine abundance. They make decisions from a mindset of scarcity, develop strategies rooted in fear, and exhaust themselves trying to squeeze water from stones, all while standing directly above the most abundant source of prosperity in existence. This revelation completely reframes our journey toward financial freedom. The core issue isn't that abundance is lacking in your life. It's that you've been disconnected from your awareness of what's already there. The pathway to prosperity isn't about creating something new or attracting something distant. It's about removing the barriers that have been blocking your recognition of and access to what's already flowing. Joseph Murphy spoke often about this principle, explaining that abundance is not something we acquire, it's something we tune into. This tuning process happens most powerfully during sleep, when the analytical mind that constantly builds dams of doubt and limitation finally quiets down. As these mental barriers temporarily dissolve during sleep, the golden river naturally begins to surface in your consciousness. The impact of this understanding revolutionizes how we approach abundance work. Instead of struggling to manufacture prosperity through sheer effort and will, we simply need to remove the obstacles that have been preventing its natural flow. This is why sleep programming proves so remarkably effective. It bypasses the conscious mind's resistance and works directly with the subconscious to dissolve these barriers at their source. Behind the scenes of this transformation lies a profound shift in your relationship with the universe itself. Most people operate from an unconscious assumption that they're separate from abundance, that wealth exists out there somewhere and must somehow be coaxed or cajoled into their experience. But this perception of separation is the fundamental illusion that sleep programming works to dissolve. The journey from scarcity to abundance consciousness isn't about changing your external circumstances. It's about remembering your true relationship with the golden river that's been flowing within and around you all along. This remembering process catalyzes what spiritual teachers call the great reversal, where instead of chasing prosperity, you begin allowing it to find you through paths of least resistance. Think of it like this. A fish born in the ocean might develop the mistaken belief that it's separate from water, that water is scarce and must be hunted and captured. It might exhaust itself swimming frantically, searching everywhere for this precious resource, never realizing that what it seeks is the very medium it moves through, the very substance that gives it life and supports its existence. In the same way, many of us have developed the illusion that we're separate from abundance, that prosperity is scarce and must be pursued through exhausting effort. We fail to recognize that the golden river of divine supply is the very medium we move through, the substance that has been supporting us all along, even during times when its presence wasn't obvious to our limited perception. The decisions you make from this elevated understanding look completely different. Instead of asking, "How can I get more money?" you begin wondering, where are the places in my consciousness where I've been damming the natural flow of abundance? Instead of focusing on lack and limitation, you start noticing the countless ways prosperity has been supporting you all along, even when you didn't recognize its presence. What makes sleep programming so transformative is how it works with this awareness. At the deepest level, as abundance affirmations flow through your sleeping consciousness, they don't just give you positive thoughts about wealth. They literally dissolve the dams of doubt and limitation that have been blocking your recognition of and access to the golden river. Each night becomes an opportunity to sink your awareness deeper into the flow that's been waiting for you all along. This understanding creates a profound shift in your energetic signature. Instead of broadcasting the frequency of lack and limitation, you begin emanating the natural confidence that comes from knowing you're always supported by infinite supply. This vibrational shift naturally attracts different circumstances, opportunities, and resources that align with your new state of awareness. If you're sensing the truth of this golden river flowing beneath your life, type infinite supply in the comments. I'd love to connect with those who are awakening to the abundance that's been here all along. But Here's where the journey takes a profound turn as you allow yourself to recognize this underlying prosperity. You begin to enter what can only be described as a sanctuary, not a physical place, but a state of consciousness where divine law reigns supreme. In this inner sanctuary, something magical happens. Your spoken word begins to merge with faith in ways that create what Joseph Murphy calls radiant decrees. These aren't ordinary affirmations or wishful thinking. When you speak from this sanctuary state during sleep programming, your words carry the authority of spiritual law itself. They become living commands that summon wealth from every corner of creation. Your like on this video creates ripples of transformation. When you click that button, you help expand this message to others who are ready for their abundance awakening. Behind the scenes of the visible world, invisible forces begin responding to your voice with the same obedience that water shows to gravity. This process reveals the hidden mechanics of true manifestation. Most people try to create change from the outside in, working harder, pushing against circumstances, forcing outcomes through will and effort. But the sanctuary approach works from the inside out, transforming the fundamental frequencies that determine what flows into your experience. This inside-out transformation represents a complete reversal of how most of us have been taught to pursue prosperity. The conventional wisdom tells us that we must first have more money in order to feel abundant, that external circumstances must change before our internal state can shift. But this approach has it precisely backward. True manifestation begins with a transformation of consciousness that then attracts corresponding external conditions. Think of it like this. Your consciousness is like the projector in a movie theater, while your life circumstances are the images on the screen. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change the pictures on the screen without ever touching the projector that's creating those images. They push against circumstances, fight limitations, and struggle to force better outcomes, never realizing that they're addressing effects rather than causes. The sanctuary state of consciousness allows you to work directly with the projector itself, the source of your experienced reality. When you change the film in your consciousness through properly aligned sleep programming, the images on the screen of your life naturally begin to shift in response. This isn't magical thinking, it's the fundamental principle behind all lasting transformation. Joseph Murphy understood this profound truth when he wrote, "Change your thinking, change your life." He wasn't offering a simplistic positive thinking formula. He was revealing the sacred mechanism by which consciousness creates experience. When your internal state shifts from scarcity to abundance, from limitation to possibility, from fear to faith, your external circumstances must eventually realign to match this new frequency. The revelation that transforms everything is understanding that you don't have to wait for external conditions to change before you can enter this sanctuary state. You can access it tonight as you drift into sleep with abundance affirmations flowing through your consciousness. In this sacred space, your spoken word merges with faith to create decrees that carry divine authority, not because of who you are in the world's eyes, but because of who you truly are as an extension of infinite intelligence. What makes this approach so revolutionary is how it bypasses the usual obstacles to transformation. During your waking hours, countless distractions, doubts, and concerns compete for your attention, making it difficult to maintain a consistent vibration of abundance. But in the sanctuary of sleep, when external noise fades away and your conscious resistance is offline, you can sustain that perfect frequency without interruption for hours at a time. This sustained immersion creates what quantum physicists might call a coherent field, a stable vibration that begins attracting corresponding experiences into your life with remarkable precision. It's as if you're broadcasting on the exact frequency that abundance recognizes and responds to, drawing opportunities, resources, and inspired ideas that perfectly match your newly aligned state. The journey of this inside-out transformation often surprises people with how naturally external circumstances begin to reflect internal shifts. Relationships that were once strained around money topics suddenly become smoother. Financial decisions that used to cause anxiety start flowing with intuitive ease. Opportunities that seemed hidden or inaccessible begin appearing as if they were waiting for you all along. And here's the beautiful paradox. The less you strive to change your external circumstances through force and effort, the more rapidly they transform to match your shifted consciousness. It's like struggling against a powerful current versus finally aligning with its natural flow. When you stop fighting against what is and start working with the inside-out principle, everything changes with remarkable grace and ease. The inner sanctuary becomes your true power center, the sacred space where you commune with divine law and issue commands that the universe must obey, not because you've somehow gained control over external forces, but because you've aligned with the fundamental principles that govern all manifestation. If you've experienced moments of this sanctuary state, where your words seemed to carry unexpected power and your consciousness felt aligned with something greater than yourself, type "sanctuary accessed" in the comments. I'd love to hear from those who've glimpsed this profound state of alignment. Now I want to reveal something even more foundational that transforms the very core of how abundance flows into your experience. Think about this for a moment. What if the greatest barrier to your prosperity isn't external circumstances or even limiting beliefs, but something far more fundamental, your perception of your own worthiness? Here's a hidden truth that most people never discover. You are counted among the beloved, not because of what you've accomplished or failed to accomplish, not because of your bank balance or your mistakes, but simply because of who you are at the deepest level. This isn't religious sentiment or wishful thinking. This is the fundamental reality of your existence. When this recognition dawns, your entire relationship with sleep transforms from a mere biological function into a sacred communion with divine source. The impact of this shift in perspective is immediate and powerful. Your nervous system begins to release decades of accumulated tension. Your breath naturally deepens. That chronic background anxiety about money, about security, about whether you're doing enough or being enough starts to dissolve into something far more supportive, a gentle knowing that you are held, you are seen, and you are provided for. This is where the hidden mechanics of true abundance begin to reveal themselves. Gratitude doesn't become something you have to manufacture or perform. It rises naturally from your heart like a spring bubbling up from deep underground. You begin to recognize the safety that has always surrounded you, the love that has never abandoned you, the provision that has consistently found ways to reach you even in your darkest moments. The revelation here transforms your entire approach to manifestation. Most people exhaust themselves trying to convince the universe of their worthiness, pleading and straining to prove they deserve good things. But when you understand your beloved status, you realize that none of that struggle was ever necessary. You don't have to earn divine love, you simply receive it by being present to what's already true. This shift in mindset creates what Joseph Murphy called a receptive frequency. Instead of broadcasting desperation or need, your energy field begins emanating a quiet confidence that abundance is natural, that provision is already handled, that everything you require is already on its way. This frequency acts like a beacon in the spiritual realm, drawing to you the very things you've been chasing with so much effort. During sleep, when you rest in this awareness of being beloved, your subconscious receives what can only be described as divine downloads. Solutions appear not through mental gymnastics, but through gentle inspiration. Opportunities align not through networking and manipulation, but through what feels like graceful synchronicity. Money flows not through desperate hustle, but through channels that seem to open effortlessly. The journey from striving to receiving represents one of the most profound transformations available to human consciousness. It's the difference between swimming upstream against a powerful current and finally turning around to discover you've been fighting the very force that wanted to carry you home. When you make decisions from this place of recognized belovedness, every choice becomes an expression of abundance rather than a hedge against scarcity. What's particularly fascinating is how this inner shift begins to reshape your external world almost immediately. People respond differently to your energy. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. Resources that seemed scarce begin appearing from unexpected directions. It's as if the entire universe conspires to confirm what you finally allowed yourself to believe, that you are worthy of good things, that prosperity is your natural state, that abundance is not something you achieve, but something you remember. Behind the scenes of this transformation lies a fundamental rewiring of your relationship with reality itself. Most people approach life from a transactional mindset, believing they must give in order to receive, work in order to earn, strive in order to deserve. But the beloved consciousness operates from a completely different paradigm, one where receiving precedes giving, where rest precedes productive action, where worthiness is inherent rather than achieved. This shift ripples through every aspect of your being. Your decisions become more intuitive, your relationships more authentic, your creativity more expansive, and your financial flow more natural. You stop approaching prosperity as something you must hunt down and capture, and begin recognizing it as the natural extension of who you already are. If you've felt moments where this beloved state seemed to transform your external reality, where acceptance of your inherent worthiness created unexpected blessings, share beloved and blessed in the comments. I'm deeply curious about how this consciousness has manifested in your own experience. Now, I want to explore this divine download phenomenon more deeply because it represents one of the most extraordinary benefits of aligning with abundance during sleep. When your conscious mind finally quiets and you rest in the awareness of your beloved status, something remarkable begins to happen within your consciousness. Your subconscious mind, that vast, powerful aspect of yourself that connects directly to infinite intelligence, becomes a perfect receiver for what Joseph Murphy called divine downloads. These aren't abstract concepts or vague inspirations. They're specific solutions, creative breakthroughs, and practical insights delivered with remarkable clarity and precision. Have you ever gone to bed puzzling over a complex problem only to wake up with the answer fully formed in your awareness? Or fallen asleep worried about a financial situation and awakened with an inspired idea that completely transforms your approach? These aren't coincidences or random mental processes. They're examples of divine downloads occurring through the portal of your sleeping consciousness. What makes these downloads so powerful is their perfect alignment with your unique gifts, talents, and circumstances. They don't arrive as generic advice or one-size-fits-all formulas. They come as custom-tailored solutions specifically designed for your particular situation. It's as if the infinite intelligence of the universe has intimate knowledge of every aspect of your life, and craft solutions that integrate perfectly with your specific journey. During your waking hours, these downloads often can't break through the mental static created by worry, analysis, and the constant stream of external information bombarding your awareness. Your conscious mind, with all its logical processes and analytical thinking, actually blocks the very intuitive guidance that would solve your problems effortlessly. But in sleep, when this interference falls away, divine intelligence can communicate directly with your subconscious without distortion or resistance. The architecture of this process reveals why inspired solutions feel so different from those created through mental effort. When you strain to solve a problem through logical analysis, you're limited to the information you consciously possess and the connections your analytical mind can make between known factors. But divine downloads tap into what William James called the more, that vast reservoir of wisdom, creativity and possibility that exists beyond the boundaries of your conscious awareness. This explains why sleep-inspired solutions often have that unmistakable quality of elegant simplicity that makes you wonder, why didn't I think of that before? They bypass the limitations of conscious reasoning and emerge from a deeper intelligence that sees patterns, connections, and possibilities invisible to your waking mind. The journey from striving to receiving represents perhaps the most profound paradigm shift in the entire abundance process. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that financial success requires constant effort, persistent struggle, and relentless pushing against resistance. We've adopted a mindset that equates worthiness with exhaustion, as if the universe will only reward us when we've proven our commitment through suffering. But this approach is like swimming upstream against a powerful current, exhausting yourself, fighting against the very force that was designed to carry you home. The transformative insight that changes everything is recognizing that abundance isn't something you chase, but something you allow. It's not a distant destination you must struggle toward, but a natural flow you finally stop resisting. Think of a leaf caught in a river eddy, spinning in circles, using all its energy just to stay in place. This represents the striving mindset, constantly exerting effort but making little forward progress. Now imagine that same leaf, finally releasing its resistance and allowing the current to carry it effortlessly downstream. This is the receiving consciousness, aligning with the natural flow of abundance rather than fighting against it. During sleep programming, this shift from striving to receiving happens at the deepest level of your being. The affirmations you hear don't just give you positive thoughts about prosperity, they literally rewire your nervous system to release the tension patterns associated with pushing and struggling. Your entire being begins to remember what it feels like to be carried by grace rather than propelled by force. What's particularly fascinating is how this receptive state creates what quantum physicists might call a path of least resistance. When you cease struggling against the current and align with divine flow, opportunities, resources, and solutions naturally gravitate toward you through the most efficient channels possible. It's not that you stop taking action, it's that your actions become inspired rather than desperate, aligned rather than forced, flowing rather than fragmented. If you've experienced that beautiful moment of surrender, where you finally stopped swimming upstream and turned to flow with life's current, type aligned with grace in the comments. I'd love to hear how that shift transformed your experience of abundance. When your decisions flow from a place of belovedness rather than unworthiness, a remarkable transformation begins to unfold in every area of your life. This isn't just a psychological shift or a temporary emotional uplift. It's a fundamental recalibration of your entire reality field. People literally respond differently to your energy because you're broadcasting a completely different frequency into the world. Where once your aura might have radiated the subtle signals of not enough or unworthy, it now emanates the quiet confidence of someone who knows they belong at the banquet table of abundance. This energetic shift catalyzes what Joseph Murphy called that were always present but invisible to your previous vibration suddenly become obvious. Resources that seem perpetually scarce begin appearing from unexpected directions. Relationships that were strained around money topics transform as if by magic. What's happening behind the scenes is a profound recalibration of your energetic signature. Every thought, feeling, and belief you hold about yourself radiates outward like an invisible broadcast, attracting corresponding experiences back to you. When your core identity shifts from unworthy struggler to beloved child of infinite supply, the entire universe must reorganize itself to match this new frequency. Imagine walking into a room full of strangers with two different mindsets. In the first scenario, you enter believing you don't belong, that you're somehow less than everyone else, that you need to prove your worth. In the second, you enter knowing you're unconditionally beloved, inherently valuable, naturally worthy of connection. Would these two mindsets create different experiences? Of course. The same principle applies to your relationship with abundance. When you approach your financial life from the consciousness of belovedness, everything changes. The evidence of this transformation often appears in ways that seem almost miraculous. The perfect opportunity arrives just when you need it. The exact amount of money you require shows up through an unexpected channel. The solution to a complex problem downloads into your awareness with perfect timing. These aren't random coincidences, but the natural consequences of your shifted consciousness. Now, I want to explore how this belovedness awareness transforms the very nature of your sleep experience. When you embrace your status as beloved and allow gratitude to flow naturally from this recognition, something extraordinary happens to those 8 hours that most people experience as ordinary unconsciousness. Your sleep transforms into what can only be described as a night of miracles. A sacred time when divine intelligence works unimpeded to reshape your consciousness at the deepest levels. This isn't poetic language or spiritual metaphor. While your physical body rests, a remarkable process unfolds within your subconscious mind. Every limiting belief you've carried, every financial story that has kept you small, every inherited pattern of scarcity begins to dissolve under the gentle but persistent influence of spiritual truth. This process reveals one of the most profound hidden truths about manifestation. Transformation doesn't require struggle or force. When you align with the natural rhythms of consciousness, change happens as naturally as a flower blooming or a river flowing toward the sea. Your sleeping mind becomes like soft clay in the hands of divine wisdom, ready to be reshaped into patterns that reflect your true abundance. The impact of this nightly transformation extends far beyond what happens in your bedroom. As limitations get rewritten in the depths of your subconscious, your waking decisions begin to shift. You find yourself making choices from confidence rather than fear. Opportunities that once seemed impossible start feeling inevitable. Your entire relationship with money begins operating from a completely different paradigm. What's particularly fascinating is how this process impresses upon your sleeping mind a recognition that changes everything. The understanding that wealth is not something you have to earn, achieve, or deserve, but something you inherit simply by virtue of who you are. Wealth is your birthright, encoded into the very fabric of your spiritual DNA, waiting only for your consciousness to become spacious enough to receive it. This is where the journey takes a remarkable turn toward the mystical. As your mind opens to these deeper truths, you begin to access what can only be described as visionary experiences. Many people report seeing what appears to be a great celestial door during this process, not with their physical eyes, but with the inner sight that awakens when consciousness expands beyond ordinary limitations. This door glows with symbols of infinite supply, ancient and eternal markings that speak directly to the soul's understanding of abundance. It's as if the universe itself is revealing its secret architecture, showing you the divine blueprints that govern prosperity and manifestation. Beyond this threshold, many glimpse rivers of gold sparkling with heaven's favor, flowing endlessly, never diminished, never restricted, always abundant. These aren't hallucinations or wishful fantasies, they're glimpses into what mystics have called the archetypal realm, the dimension where all possibilities exist in their perfected form, waiting to manifest into physical reality. When your consciousness touches this level during sleep programming, you're not just listening to affirmations, you're connecting with the source code of abundance itself. If you've experienced these glimpses of the abundance beyond the veil, these moments where your sleeping consciousness touched something greater than ordinary reality, share divine blueprint activated in the comments. I'm fascinated by how these mystical experiences manifest uniquely for different individuals. The revelations that emerge from these visionary experiences often surprise people with their clarity and practical impact. You might wake up with a business idea that seems to have downloaded fully formed. Financial solutions that eluded you for months suddenly become obvious. People and opportunities begin appearing in your life with perfect timing, as if orchestrated by an invisible intelligence that sees the bigger picture. Now, I want to explore what happens when you truly commit to this nightly transformation process. What you're experiencing represents nothing less than an exodus from the desert of lack. That barren landscape where so many spend their entire lives convinced that scarcity is normal, that struggle is necessary, that not enough is the natural state of human existence. This desert hasn't been your true home. You've been wandering there not because you deserve punishment or because abundance is unavailable to you, but because you inherited maps drawn by others who themselves were lost. Parents, teachers, mentors, and cultural influences, many well-meaning, but themselves trapped in scarcity consciousness, handed you guidance based on their own limited understanding. The journey you're embarking on now isn't just a minor improvement in your financial circumstances. This is a complete migration from one spiritual territory to another. Like the biblical exodus from Egypt to the Promised Land, you're leaving behind the familiar limitations that have defined your experience and stepping into a completely new paradigm of possibility. Behind the scenes of this exodus lies a profound identity shift. In the desert of lack, you were a wanderer, confused, thirsty, constantly searching for just enough to survive another day. But in this new territory of abundance consciousness, you become a different person entirely, a citizen of plenty, with all the rights and privileges that entail. The hidden truth that makes this transformation possible is that the desert was never your punishment. It was simply the consequence of operating with inaccurate maps. And the Promised Land isn't your reward for good behavior. It's your natural habitat, the place your consciousness has been trying to find all along. This revelation completely reshapes how you understand your financial journey. Every struggle wasn't evidence of your failure, but simply the pain of using the wrong coordinates. What accelerates this exodus beyond anything you might have experienced Before is how the process unfolds during sleep. In those precious hours when your conscious mind finally rests, your manifestation power is magnified beyond measure. This isn't exaggeration or metaphor. It's a fundamental principle of how consciousness operates. During your waking hours, your conscious mind constantly filters, analyzes, questions, and often rejects new information, especially ideas that contradict your existing beliefs about what's possible. This critical faculty serves an important purpose in helping you navigate daily life, but it becomes a significant obstacle when you're trying to install new abundance programming. But in sleep, something miraculous happens. The gatekeeper finally takes a break. All those mental barriers that normally protect your limiting beliefs dissolve like morning mist. Your subconscious mind, which comprises roughly 95% of your total mental capacity, stands wide open like fertile soil, ready to receive whatever seeds you plant there. The impact of this receptive state cannot be overstated. Affirmations that might be met with doubt or resistance during waking hours sink directly into the deepest levels of your consciousness during sleep. Abundance programming that would normally take months or years to integrate can be installed in a fraction of the time because there's no resistance to overcome. This is why Joseph Murphy emphasized the extraordinary power of the sleeping state for manifestation work. He understood that an hour of properly aligned sleep programming often accomplishes more than weeks of conscious effort. Your mind isn't just passively absorbing information during these hours. It's actively reorganizing itself around these new frequencies of abundance. Think of it like the difference between trying to renovate a building while it's full of people versus making those same changes when it's empty. During your waking hours, your consciousness is occupied with immediate concerns, practical problems, emotional responses, and sensory input. Making significant changes to your abundance blueprint is like trying to replace the foundation while people are still walking on the floors above. But during sleep, the building empties out. The constant activity subsides. Now those same renovations can happen quickly, efficiently, and completely. Entire belief systems can be removed and replaced without disruption because the normal obstacles to change are temporarily offline. The journey of working with this magnified power often surprises people with how quickly changes begin to manifest in their waking experience. Ideas and inspirations that seemed blocked suddenly flow with ease. Opportunities that appeared distant begin showing up in your immediate environment. Resources that seemed unavailable start finding their way to you through unexpected channels. All of these external changes reflect what's happening at the deepest level of your consciousness as you make this exodus from scarcity to abundance thinking. You're not just adopting new thoughts about prosperity, you're literally becoming a different person with a transformed relationship to the entire concept of supply. If you've noticed this exodus beginning in your own life, these first signs of leaving the desert of lack behind and glimpsing the promised land of abundance, type crossing over in the comments. I'm deeply interested in connecting with fellow travelers who are making this sacred journey. Now, I want to explore what happens in those sacred hours of sleep that makes them so incredibly powerful for transformation. Understanding this process will forever change how you view those 8 hours that most people dismiss as merely downtime or rest. Your sleeping hours transform your inner landscape into what can only be described as the great hidden workshop of spirit. This isn't just poetic language. This is the actual spiritual technology that molds unseen substance into tangible reality. During your waking hours, Your mind is constantly bombarded with external stimuli, internal chatter, and endless streams of information that create what neuroscientists call cognitive load. Your thoughts bounce from worry to planning to memory to fantasy, creating a kind of mental static that interferes with pure spiritual reception. But when sleep arrives and this noise finally quiets, something extraordinary happens behind the scenes of consciousness. Your subconscious mind, now free from the constant interference of mental noise, becomes like a master craftsman's workshop, perfectly organized, completely focused, ready to transform raw spiritual material into the forms that will manifest in your physical experience. Every abundance affirmation you hear during this time doesn't just float through your awareness and disappear. It gets taken into this workshop where invisible hands begin shaping it into the blueprint for your financial reality. The impact of this process extends far beyond what happens during sleep itself. The decisions you make during your waking hours, the opportunities you notice, the actions you feel inspired to take, all of these emerge from the deep work happening in this subconscious workshop. Your conscious mind might think it's running the show, but the real architecture of transformation is being built in the depths where spirit has complete creative freedom. Joseph Murphy understood this principle deeply when he wrote about the sleeping giant within each person, that vast intelligence that awakens most fully when the conscious mind rests. What makes this process so remarkably effective is how the conscious mind's role changes during sleep. Throughout your waking hours, your conscious mind functions like a vigilant gatekeeper, constantly evaluating, analyzing, questioning every piece of information that approaches your awareness. This gatekeeper has been trained by years of experience to be skeptical about abundance, suspicious of easy solutions, and protective of the familiar patterns that define your current financial reality. This gatekeeper means well, but it often blocks the very transformation you're seeking. When you hear abundance affirmations during waking hours, the gatekeeper immediately springs into action with questions like, is this realistic? Do I really deserve this? How could this possibly work given my current situation? These doubts and reasonings create resistance that prevents the spiritual programming from taking root. But here's where the journey takes a remarkable turn. During sleep, this protective gatekeeper finally takes a well-deserved rest. The analytical mind that normally filters and questions everything steps aside, creating what spiritual teachers call pure receptivity. Your subconscious becomes like a clear pool of water, perfectly still, capable of receiving and reflecting divine impressions without distortion. In this state of pure receptivity, abundance, affirmations bypass all mental resistance and sink directly into the fertile soil of your deeper consciousness. There's no debate, no analysis, no questioning, just direct impression upon the creative faculty that actually shapes your experience. This is why sleep programming often succeeds where waking efforts fail. The very mechanism that normally sabotages transformation is temporarily offline. Behind the scenes of this receptive state, your subconscious mind works according to principles completely different from your conscious awareness. While your conscious mind evaluates based on past experience and apparent limitation, your subconscious operates from pure creative potential. It doesn't know what's impossible or unrealistic. It simply receives the impressions given to it and begins organizing your perception and behavior to align with these new patterns. This principle reveals why people often experience what seems like miraculous shifts after consistent sleep. Programming. Ideas that seemed impossible suddenly appear obvious. Opportunities that were invisible become apparent. Resources that seemed unavailable start appearing through unexpected channels. Your subconscious that master craftsman working tirelessly in the workshop of your sleeping consciousness, is literally rebuilding your relationship with abundance from the ground up. The revelations that emerge from this understanding completely reframe how you approach abundance work. Instead of trying to convince your conscious mind to believe in prosperity, often an exhausting and frustrating process, you can work directly with the subconscious during its most receptive hours. You're essentially bypassing the gatekeeper and going straight to the creative source. What's particularly fascinating about this workshop process is how it operates on multiple dimensions simultaneously. While you sleep, your subconscious isn't just absorbing new information about abundance, it's actively reorganizing your entire relationship with prosperity. Old limiting beliefs are being dissolved, restrictive patterns are being rewired, and new possibilities are being embedded into the very structure of your consciousness. If you've experienced those unmistakable signs of the workshop at work, waking with inspired ideas that weren't there when you fell asleep, noticing opportunities that were previously invisible, or feeling a mysterious confidence about financial matters that once caused anxiety, share Workshop Activated in the comments. I'd love to hear how this transformative process is manifesting uniquely in your life. Now, I want to explore one of the most profound biblical principles that holds the key to understanding how transformation actually happens at the deepest level. There's an ancient wisdom that states, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Most people misunderstand this completely, assuming it refers to the fleeting thoughts that dart through their minds throughout the day, those surface-level opinions and temporary emotions that come and go like clouds across the sky. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything about how you approach abundance programming. The heart, in this context, doesn't refer to surface-level thinking at all. It represents those deep subconscious convictions that operate beneath your conscious awareness, the fundamental beliefs about reality, worthiness, and possibility that actually govern your experience. Whether you're aware of them or not, these heart-level convictions are incredibly powerful because they operate behind the scenes of your daily decisions and automatic responses. When you encounter a financial opportunity, your surface mind might analyze the pros and cons, but your deep subconscious convictions have already determined whether you'll recognize it as viable, whether you'll feel worthy of pursuing it, and whether you'll take the actions necessary to make it successful. The impact of this understanding is staggering. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change their circumstances through surface-level thinking and conscious effort, never realizing that their heart-level convictions are continuously recreating the same patterns. They might affirm abundance during the day, while their subconscious convictions whisper, "This isn't for someone like me," or "good things don't last," or "money is the root of all evil." This is where the journey into sleep programming becomes truly transformative, because it allows you to work directly with these heart-level convictions during the hours when they're most malleable. Joseph Murphy understood this principle deeply when he wrote about the law of the subconscious, the recognition that our deepest beliefs, not our conscious declarations, determine what manifests in our experience. Think about the decisions you've made around money throughout your life, the opportunities you've embraced or avoided, the risks you've taken or declined, the patterns of saving, spending, earning, and investing that have shaped your financial reality. None of these were random choices. They all emerged from your heart-level convictions about who you are in relationship to abundance. The truly liberating insight is that these convictions aren't fixed or permanent. They're simply programs that were installed through repetition and emotional intensity, often during childhood when your critical faculty wasn't fully developed. And just as they were installed, they can be updated, overwritten, or completely replaced through properly aligned sleep programming. Your subconscious mind operates according to completely different principles than your conscious mind. While your conscious mind questions, analyzes, and resists, your subconscious functions as what Joseph Murphy called the faithful servant. This faithful servant doesn't argue with the instructions it receives. It doesn't reason about whether something is possible or impossible, deserved or undeserved, realistic or fantastical. It simply receives whatever impressions are given to it, believes them completely, and immediately begins the process of creating experiences that match those impressions. This is both the incredible power and the profound responsibility of subconscious programming. Every thought, image, and feeling you consistently entertain is being received by this faithful servant as an instruction to manifest in your experience. The revelations that emerge from understanding this faithful servant nature of the subconscious explain why consistency and rhythm are so crucial in abundance work. Your subconscious doesn't respond to occasional bursts of positive thinking or sporadic affirmations delivered with wavering conviction. It responds to repeated impressions delivered with steady, rhythmic consistency over time. Think of it like learning to play a musical instrument. You don't become proficient through one intense practice session or by occasionally picking up the instrument when you feel motivated. Mastery develops through daily practice, through consistent repetition that gradually rewires your neural pathways until complex movements become automatic and natural. Sleep programming works according to the same principles, but with a tremendous advantage. During sleep, when your conscious resistance is offline, every affirmation reaches your subconscious with pristine clarity. There's no mental static, no analytical interference, no emotional turbulence to distort the signal. Your faithful servant receives each impression in its purest form and immediately begins the work of transformation. What's particularly fascinating is how this process creates what neuroscientists call neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize itself and form new neural connections. Each night of abundance programming literally rewires your brain's default pathways, making thoughts of prosperity more automatic and natural, while thoughts of scarcity become increasingly foreign to your system. The journey of working with your subconscious faithful servant often surprises people with how differently it responds compared to conscious effort. Where conscious attempts at change often meet resistance and struggle, subconscious programming flows with remarkable ease once the proper conditions are established. It's like the difference between trying to push a boulder uphill versus simply removing the obstacles and allowing it to roll naturally downhill. If you've noticed your faithful servant beginning to respond to new programming, perhaps through changed financial intuitions, different reactions to opportunities, or shifts in how you naturally think about money, share "Faithful Servant Activated" in the comments. I'm deeply curious about the unique ways this transformation is unfolding in your life. When your faithful servant begins responding to new programming, when you notice those subtle shifts in how you naturally think about and relate to money, you enter what can only be described as a sacred planting season for your soul. This isn't just another manifestation technique or spiritual practice. This is the actual process by which divine intelligence plants the seeds of your future prosperity directly into the fertile ground of your consciousness. Each word of abundance that flows over you during sleep programming carries a significance far beyond its surface. Meaning, These aren't just positive statements or hopeful affirmations drifting through your awareness. Each phrase is a divine seed carried on the wind of spirit itself, designed to sink deep into the subconscious soil where it cannot be uprooted by the doubts and fears that might assault your conscious mind during waking hours. The hidden truth about this planting process reveals why sleep programming succeeds where other abundance methods often fail. During your waking hours, doubt acts like a persistent weed that can choke out even the most beautiful intentions. You might plant seeds of prosperity through morning affirmations or vision boards, but if doubt gets to them first, those seeds never have a chance to establish deep roots. They remain vulnerable to every financial setback, every discouraging comment, every piece of negative news about the economy. But when abundant seeds are planted during sleep, they bypass this vulnerable surface layer entirely. They sink immediately into depths where doubt cannot reach, where fear has no jurisdiction, where the soil remains pure and uncontaminated by worldly conditioning. These seeds take root in what Joseph Murphy called the eternal ground of consciousness, that place where divine truth is the only reality that exists. The impact of this deeper planting creates a completely different type of transformation. Instead of trying to maintain positive thinking through conscious effort and willpower, you begin experiencing abundance as a natural outpouring of your recoded subconscious patterns. Prosperity becomes less like something you're trying to achieve and more like something that's flowering from within you automatically. This process transforms your entire inner landscape into what can only be described as a vast, silent garden under divine moonlight. The chaos and noise that normally characterize your mental environment give way to a profound stillness, a sacred silence where spiritual forces can work without interference. In this hushed space, something beautiful begins to happen behind the scenes of ordinary awareness. Invisible angels, those messengers of divine intelligence, move through this silent garden with purposeful grace, planting words of power that will reshape every area of your life. They plant wealth in the soil of your financial consciousness. They cultivate health in the ground of your physical well-being. They sow joy in the depths of your emotional landscape. They establish perfect work in the field of your career aspirations. They nurture right relationships in the garden of your connections with others. What's particularly powerful about this angelic gardening process is how it works holistically rather than in isolation. Most people approach abundance as if it's separate from other areas of life, trying to manifest money without addressing their health or seeking financial success while tolerating toxic relationships. But divine intelligence understands that true prosperity is an integrated flowering that touches every aspect of your existence. The revelations that emerge from this garden metaphor completely reframe how you understand the timing of manifestation. Gardens don't produce instant results. They follow natural seasons of growth that can't be rushed, but also can't be stopped once the process begins. Some seeds sprout quickly, sending up green shoots within days. Others remain hidden underground for weeks or months, establishing extensive root systems before their first leaves appear. Your abundance garden follows the same principles. Some financial seeds planted during sleep programming manifest almost immediately. Unexpected checks, sudden opportunities, or inspired ideas that lead to quick income. Others work more slowly, developing the deep spiritual and practical foundations necessary for larger transformations that will sustain you for years to come. This understanding releases you from the pressure of expecting instant manifestation that often sabotages other abundance approaches. You recognize that the divine gardener knows exactly what each seed requires and provides the perfect conditions for its unique unfolding. Some blessings need time to develop their full potential, just as an oak tree takes longer to mature than a sunflower, but its shade and strength will last for generations once established. The protected nature of these sleeping seeds creates what Joseph Murphy called unshakable faith, a quiet confidence that what has been planted must eventually emerge into visible form. This isn't wishful thinking or desperate hope. It's the same certainty that a gardener feels after properly planting quality seeds in fertile soil. The harvest isn't a question of if, but simply when. What makes this sacred planting season so revolutionary is how it bypasses the conscious mind's tendency to dig up seeds to see if they're growing. During waking manifestation work, many people sabotage their efforts through constant checking, worrying, and questioning. But seeds planted during sleep remain protected from this interference, developing in perfect timing without the anxious monitoring that often stunts their growth. If you're beginning to sense the sacred garden growing within your consciousness, if you've noticed those first tender shoots of abundance beginning to emerge in your life, share Divine Garden Awakening in the comments. I'd love to connect with fellow sacred gardeners who are nurturing these protected seeds of prosperity. Now, I want to reveal the extraordinary process that unfolds in this inner garden while you sleep. Beyond the planting of seeds lies what Joseph Murphy called the angelic gardening process, a sacred collaboration between your consciousness and divine intelligence that transforms every aspect of your life. In the hushed silence of your sleeping mind, invisible angels, those messengers of divine intelligence, move through your inner garden with purposeful grace. This isn't poetic imagery, but a profound metaphor for the actual spiritual forces at work while your body rests. These angelic presences don't just scatter seeds randomly. They work with exquisite precision, planting specific words of power in exactly the right soil of your consciousness to create perfect, harmonious growth. They plant wealth in the fertile ground of your financial awareness, gently removing stones of lack and scarcity that might impede growth. They cultivate health in the soil of your physical consciousness, nurturing vitality and well-being at the cellular level. They sow joy in the emotional landscape, creating pathways for happiness to flow naturally rather than being constantly pursued. They establish the blueprint for perfect work in your career aspirations, aligning your gifts with meaningful contribution and abundant compensation. They nurture right relationships throughout your social garden, healing wounds from past interactions and preparing the ground for healthier connections. Behind the scenes of this gardening process lies a profound understanding of interconnectedness that most abundance approaches miss entirely. The angelic gardeners don't see your life as separate compartments, financial, physical, emotional, professional, relational, but as one integrated ecosystem where each element affects all others. They understand that true prosperity can't flourish in isolation. Financial abundance struggles to take root in soil poisoned by toxic relationships. Career success withers when planted in ground depleted by poor health. This holistic approach explains why sleep programming often creates unexpected transformations that extend far beyond financial improvement. People report enhanced creativity, deepened relationships, renewed health, and spiritual awakening, not because they specifically focused on these areas, but because the angelic gardeners are cultivating the entire ecosystem of their consciousness. What makes this process so extraordinary is its perfect alignment with divine timing and natural order. Unlike human gardeners who might impatiently force growth or harvest prematurely, these angelic presences work in perfect harmony with the natural seasons of manifestation. They understand that each seed requires its unique conditions and development timeline. This understanding of natural growth cycles brings us to one of the most liberating revelations about manifestation. Like gardens, abundance doesn't produce instant, uniform results. It follows natural seasons that cannot be rushed, yet cannot be stopped once the process begins. Some seeds sprout quickly, sending green shoots above the surface within days of planting. Others remain hidden beneath the soil for weeks or months, developing extensive root systems before their first leaves appear. The hidden wisdom in this seasonal understanding transforms how you relate to the manifestation process. Most approaches to abundance create anxiety through impatience, leaving you constantly checking for results and becoming discouraged when visible evidence doesn't appear immediately. But when you grasp the natural growth cycles, you develop what Joseph Murphy called divine patience, that quiet confidence that what has been properly planted must eventually emerge in perfect timing. Some financial blessings manifest quickly, perhaps an unexpected check, a sudden opportunity, or an inspired idea leading to immediate income. Others develop more slowly, building the deep foundational structures necessary for sustainable wealth. The sudden inspiration for a business might appear overnight, but its full development into a thriving enterprise follows the natural timeline of growth. Just as an oak tree takes longer to mature than a flower, but provides shade, strength, and abundance for generations once established. This understanding releases you from the desperate energy of trying to force manifestation through sheer will or constant affirmation. You recognize that divine intelligence knows the perfect timing for each seed's emergence. Some opportunities aren't appearing yet, not because you're doing something wrong, but because the complete ecosystem required for their sustainable growth is still being prepared behind the scenes. The journey of honoring these natural seasons creates a profound shift in your manifestation energy. Instead of broadcasting the anxious frequency of "where are my results?" you begin emanating the calm confidence of a master gardener who has planted quality seeds in fertile soil and now cooperates with the natural unfolding of growth. This shifted energy itself becomes a powerful attractor, drawing even more abundance toward you through what quantum physicists might call resonant harmony. What's particularly fascinating about these natural cycles is how they create what Joseph Murphy termed compound spiritual interest. Just as financial investments grow through compounding, each season of manifestation builds upon the previous one, creating exponential rather than linear growth. The small opportunity that appears today becomes the foundation for the major breakthrough 6 months from now. The modest increase in income this year creates the investment capital for multiples of growth in the coming years. If you're beginning to sense these natural cycles operating in your own abundance journey, perhaps noticing how today's blessings grew from seeds planted in previous seasons, share divine timing activated in the comments. I'm fascinated by how these natural rhythms of manifestation express uniquely in each person's garden. Now, I want to explore what might be the most profound aspect of sleep programming. While your physical body rests and recovers, something extraordinary happens at the spiritual level that most people never realize is occurring. Your spirit, that eternal aspect of your being that transcends physical limitations, maintains what can only be described as direct communion with infinite intelligence. This isn't mystical poetry or wishful thinking. This is the actual mechanics of how divine wisdom flows into human consciousness when all the usual barriers are temporarily removed. During your waking hours, your mind is constantly occupied with immediate concerns, practical problems, and the endless stream of sensory input from your environment. But when sleep arrives, and these Distractions fade away. Your spirit naturally reconnects with that vast intelligence that orchestrates galaxies and governs the movement of atoms. This communion happens automatically, not because you've earned it through spiritual practice or proven your worthiness through good behavior, but simply because it's the natural state of your being when artificial barriers are removed. The hidden truth about this communion process reveals why sleep programming creates such rapid and lasting transformations. You're not just listening to affirmations or trying to convince yourself of new possibilities. You're actually receiving direct transmission of wisdom and guidance that's too expansive and multidimensional for your waking mind to fully grasp. This information downloads into your consciousness like software being installed on a computer, silently, efficiently, and with immediate access to capabilities you didn't have before. Joseph Murphy referred to this as the cosmic connection, that natural state of unity with divine mind that most people experience only in fleeting moments of inspiration or profound meditation, but which becomes your consistent reality during properly aligned sleep. In this connected state, your consciousness expands beyond its usual limitations, accessing what quantum physicists might call non-local intelligence, wisdom that transcends the boundaries of time, space, and individual knowledge. The impact of this spiritual communion extends far beyond what happens during the sleep hours themselves. The decisions you make during the day, the opportunities you notice, the people you encounter, the ideas that suddenly seem obvious. All of these are influenced by the guidance you received while your conscious mind was offline. You begin operating from a kind of inner knowing that can't be explained through logical analysis, but proves itself through consistent results. Behind the scenes of this communion process, something remarkable begins to unfold. Those financial challenges that have been plaguing you for months or even years, those business problems that seem to have no solution, those relationship issues that felt permanently stuck. Answers begin flowing effortlessly into your awareness, not through struggle or intense mental effort, but through what feels like gentle whispers in the quiet chambers of your subconscious mind. This effortless flow of solutions represents one of the most beautiful aspects of sleep programming. Your waking mind might have been wrestling with problems, analyzing possibilities, researching options, and feeling increasingly frustrated by the lack of clear direction. But infinite intelligence sees the bigger picture immediately. It recognizes connections your logical mind couldn't make, perceives opportunities your conscious awareness couldn't detect, and knows the perfect timing for solutions to emerge. What's particularly fascinating is how these solutions arrive fully formed rather than as partial insights that require further development. You might wake up with a complete business strategy, a clear understanding of how to resolve a financial issue, or sudden clarity about a relationship decision that's been weighing on you. These aren't fragmentary glimpses or vague intuitions. They're comprehensive revelations that feel like they've been downloaded directly from a source of perfect wisdom. The journey of receiving these whispered answers transforms your entire approach to problem solving and decision making. Instead of relying solely on mental analysis and external research, you begin to trust the guidance that emerges from your communion with infinite intelligence. You start approaching challenges with the sense of calm expectation rather than anxious struggle, knowing that solutions are already forming in the depths of consciousness, even when your surface mind can't see them yet. This shift in mindset creates what can only be described as a flow state that extends into your waking hours. Instead of forcing outcomes through willpower and effort, you begin moving in harmony with the solutions that are effortlessly emerging from your deepest wisdom. Your actions become more aligned. your timing improves, and opportunities start appearing with almost supernatural precision. The revelations that flow through this communion often surprise people with how they transcend conventional thinking. While your logical mind tends to approach problems from within existing frameworks, infinite intelligence offers solutions that often represent quantum leaps beyond current paradigms. These aren't just better ways of doing what you've always done. They're entirely new approaches that reframe the situation from a higher perspective. If you've experienced these moments where answers seem to arrive effortlessly after a night's sleep, where complex problems suddenly resolve themselves through insights that weren't available to your waking analysis, share cosmic download received in the comments. I'm deeply interested in these moments of direct communion that transform our relationship with challenge and solution. When you open yourself to receive divine solutions during your sacred sleeping hours, when you begin to trust the wisdom that flows effortlessly from infinite intelligence, you're led into perhaps the most liberating discovery of this entire journey. Spirit begins guiding you to finally cease striving, to step away from the exhausting treadmill of trying to force abundance through willpower, manipulation, and relentless effort, and enter what can only be described as the ease and certainty of divine law. This transition from striving to ease represents one of the most profound shifts available to human consciousness. Most people have been conditioned to believe that financial success requires grinding, hustling, sacrificing, and pushing against resistance until something finally gives way. They approach prosperity like a war to be won rather than a gift to be received. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. Abundance operates according to spiritual law, not human effort. And spiritual law functions through ease, not struggle. Behind the scenes of this revelation lies a complete reframe of how manifestation actually works. When you're striving, you're operating from the assumption that you need to create something that doesn't already exist, that you need to convince the universe to give you what you want, that you need to prove your worthiness through suffering and sacrifice. But divine law operates from a completely different premise, that abundance is already decreed and established in the spiritual realm, waiting only for your alignment and recognition. Joseph Murphy understood this principle deeply when he wrote, "What you're seeking is already seeking you." This isn't spiritual poetry. It's the fundamental mechanics of how prosperity actually operates. The impact of stepping into this ease transforms every aspect of your relationship with money and success. Your decisions begin flowing from inspiration rather than desperation. Your actions become aligned with natural timing rather than forced through impatience. Your energy shifts from the frantic frequency of scarcity to the calm assurance of divine provision. You stop swimming upstream against the current and discover that you've been fighting the very force that wanted to carry you home all along. This transformation becomes particularly powerful during sleep programming, because it's during these hours of rest that your system finally releases the tension patterns associated with striving. Your nervous system, which may have been locked in fight or flight mode around financial issues for years, begins to remember what safety feels like. Your subconscious mind, freed from the constant pressure to figure everything out, opens to receive impressions of abundance with childlike simplicity and trust. Think about how differently you approach challenges when you're operating from ease versus striving. When you're striving, every obstacle becomes a battle to be fought. Every setback triggers anxiety about whether you'll ever succeed. Every delay feels like punishment for not trying hard enough. But when you're flowing with divine ease, Obstacles become redirections toward better paths, setbacks transform into setups for greater breakthroughs, and timing unfolds with perfect precision that often becomes clear only in retrospect. What makes this approach so revolutionary is how it completely inverts conventional wisdom about success. The world tells you that rest comes after achievement, that ease is the reward for struggle, that relaxation must be earned through exhaustion. But spiritual law operates according to the opposite principle, that rest precedes creation, that ease accelerates manifestation, that relaxation creates the optimal conditions for inspired action. Joseph Murphy often shared the paradoxical insight that the less you do, the more is accomplished. He wasn't advocating laziness or passivity, but rather that specific kind of effortless action that flows from aligned consciousness rather than anxious striving. It's what Eastern philosophers call wu wei, action without forcing, where your movements become so perfectly attuned to divine timing that they create maximum impact with minimum resistance. During sleep programming, this principle becomes your lived experience rather than just an intellectual concept. As abundance affirmations flow through your receptive consciousness, they begin dissolving the deep tension patterns associated with striving and struggle. Your entire system gradually remembers what it feels like to be carried by grace rather than driven by fear. Your decisions start flowing from inspiration rather than desperation, and opportunities align with remarkable synchronicity. The journey from striving to ease often surprises people with how it transforms not just their financial results, but their entire quality of life. Sleep becomes more restful, relationships more harmonious, creativity more abundant, and intuition more accurate. It's as if removing the static of constant striving allows the music of life to play through you with perfect clarity and resonance. What's particularly beautiful about this shift is how it creates what Joseph Murphy called the magnetic state, a quality of consciousness that naturally attracts ideal circumstances without effort or manipulation. When you cease the exhausting broadcast of striving and struggling, your energy field begins emanating a completely different frequency, one that draws opportunities, resources, and support to you through paths of least resistance. If you've experienced moments of this divine ease, where abundance seemed to find you without the usual pushing and forcing, share effortless flow. Activated in the comments. I'm deeply curious about these experiences where ceasing to strive created space for miracles to unfold naturally in your life. Now, I want to reveal the remarkable transformation happening at the neurological level during these sacred hours of sleep. What most people never realize is that each affirmation you hear isn't just floating through your awareness like pleasant background music. These words are actually functioning as precise instruments in the hands around music. These words are actually functioning as precise instruments in the hands of what Joseph Murphy called divine electricians, spiritual forces working with remarkable precision to rewire the very circuitry of your consciousness. Each abundance affirmation acts like a gentle but persistent chisel, gradually wearing away the mental grooves that have been automatically leading your thoughts towards scarcity, while simultaneously creating new neural pathways that naturally flow toward prosperity consciousness. This isn't metaphorical language. It's the actual mechanics of how neuroplasticity works during sleep, when your brain is most receptive to deep reprogramming. Behind the scenes of this rewiring process lies one of the most fascinating aspects of transformation. Your brain literally reorganizes itself during sleep, pruning connections that no longer serve your highest good, while strengthening and creating new pathways aligned with abundance. It's as if divine intelligence knows exactly which neural circuits have been maintaining your limitation patterns and precisely which new connections need to be established to support your financial awakening. The architecture of this rewiring reveals why sleep programming creates such lasting change compared to daytime affirmations. During waking hours, your brain is constantly reinforcing existing neural pathways through familiar thoughts, emotions, and reactions to circumstances. It's like trying to redirect a river that's been flowing in the same channel for decades. The water naturally returns to its established course despite temporary diversions. But during sleep, when your conscious resistance is offline and your brain enters its natural restoration mode, these divine electricians can work without interference. They don't just influence surface thoughts or create temporary emotional uplift. They're literally reconstructing the foundational wiring that determines your automatic responses to financial situations, your instinctive reactions to opportunities, your reflexive thoughts about money, your unconscious beliefs about what's possible for your life. What's particularly powerful about this rewiring process is how it creates what neuroscientists call long-term potentiation, the strengthening of neural connections through repeated activation. Each night of sleep programming doesn't just add to the previous night's work, it compounds it, creating stronger and more established pathways that gradually become your new default settings. The thoughts that once required conscious effort begin flowing automatically. The abundance mindset that initially felt foreign starts feeling like your natural state of being. This journey of neural transformation often surprises people with how it impacts areas of life seemingly unrelated to finances. As those scarcity pathways get rewired, you might notice changes in your relationships, health choices, creative expression, and spiritual connection. This happens because limitation thinking isn't confined to money alone. It's an integrated network affecting every aspect of how you perceive and interact with the world. As these divine electricians continue their precise work night after night, something profound begins to unfold in your consciousness. You naturally begin to embody what Joseph Murphy called the art of surrender, that sacred state where you finally release the controlling patterns that have been blocking abundance and become fertile ground where prosperity can be planted without any resistance whatsoever. This surrender isn't about giving up or becoming passive. It represents a profound shift in how you relate to manifestation. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who must work hard to create wealth through force and manipulation, you begin to recognize yourself as the perfect soil where abundance naturally wants to grow. Your role shifts from exhausting creator to receptive partner in a divine collaboration. The hidden truth about this surrender process reveals why so many people struggle with abundance despite their best efforts. When you approach prosperity from a state of tension and control, you're essentially creating hard, compacted soil where seeds of abundance can't take root. But surrender creates the perfect conditions for spiritual planting. Soft, receptive, nourished ground where divine ideas can establish deep root systems and flourish into magnificent manifestations. Behind the scenes of this surrendered state, your subconscious begins construction. Projects that would astound you if you could see them with your physical eyes. These aren't built from brick and mortar. They're constructed from new thought patterns, elevated expectations, and expanded beliefs about what's possible for your life. Every night of sleep programming adds another room, another garden path, another fountain of inspiration to this inner architecture of abundance. The impact of this subconscious construction work extends into every decision you make during your waking hours. You begin approaching opportunities from the mindset of someone who already lives in a palace, rather than someone still hoping to escape a hut. Your choices reflect the elevated consciousness that's being built during your sleeping hours. And gradually, your external circumstances begin to mirror this inner transformation. What makes this surrender so powerful is how it creates what quantum physicists might call a path of least resistance. When you're constantly controlling, manipulating, and forcing outcomes through willpower, you're actually creating energetic turbulence that blocks the natural flow of abundance. But when you truly surrender to divine wisdom while maintaining clear intention, you become like a perfectly positioned channel through which prosperity can flow without obstruction. If you've begun experiencing this beautiful art of surrender, where controlling less actually brings you more abundance, share Divine Surrender Activated in the comments. I'm deeply curious about how this paradoxical principle is manifesting in your unique journey toward prosperity consciousness. But before you can fully enter this state of fertile surrender, before your subconscious can begin its construction work without interference, there's an essential preparation that must take place. You must deliberately cast every burden at the feet of what Joseph Murphy called the Christ within, that divine aspect of your being that has the power to transform any situation from lack to abundance, from struggle to ease. This burden casting isn't just a nice spiritual concept or a comforting ritual. It's a practical necessity for effective sleep programming, because you simply cannot become fertile ground while you're still clutching the heavy baggage of struggle and worry. Every financial anxiety you carry, every past failure you rehearse, every future concern you entertain acts like a stone in the soil, preventing the seeds of abundance from finding the soft earth they need to grow. The revelations that emerge from understanding this burden-casting process completely reframe how you approach bedtime preparation. Instead of going to sleep while mentally reviewing your problems, analyzing your challenges, or worrying about tomorrow's obligations, you begin each evening with a deliberate release ceremony. You acknowledge every burden that has accumulated during the day, the bills that need paying, the decisions that feel overwhelming, the circumstances that seem impossible, and you consciously place them in the hands of the divine intelligence that operates within you. This laying down of burdens creates immediate physiological changes in your body. Your nervous system begins to shift out of fight or flight mode and into the rest and digest state that's optimal for deep restorative sleep. Your breathing naturally deepens. Your muscles release their tension. Your mind starts to clear of the mental chatter that normally interferes. With peaceful rest, what's particularly powerful about this process is how it prepares your consciousness for maximum receptivity to abundance programming. When you release the weight of trying to figure everything out with your limited human perspective, you create space for infinite intelligence to provide solutions that exceed anything your conscious mind could have conceived. Spirit has provided what can only be described as a perfect law of release, a spiritual mechanism so precise and effective that it allows you to walk completely free from the weight you've been carrying, light as a feather, buoyant on that golden river of supply we explored earlier. This law of release operates according to principles that most people never discover because they've been conditioned to believe that carrying burdens is somehow noble or necessary. They think that worrying about problems shows responsibility, that losing sleep over challenges demonstrates care, that wrestling with difficulties alone proves strength. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. The very act of carrying these burdens creates a vibration of struggle that repels the solutions you're seeking. The perfect law of release works by recognizing that you were never designed to carry the weight of life's challenges on your own shoulders. Every financial pressure, every relationship concern, every health worry that keeps you awake at night, these are not your burdens to bear through human effort and Mental gymnastics. They are opportunities to activate this divine law and experience the profound relief that comes from true spiritual delegation. Behind the scenes of this release process lies one of the most beautiful and powerful images in all of spiritual literature. When you cast every care, every worry, every impossible situation into what Joseph Murphy called the consuming fire of divine love, something miraculous happens. These problems don't just get temporarily set aside or mentally suppressed. They are literally transformed by contact with this divine fire, the way paper becomes ash, the way ice becomes water, the way caterpillars become butterflies. The impact of this transformation extends far beyond temporary emotional relief. When you truly cast your burdens into this consuming fire, you begin to operate from the profound knowing that God has already handled what you thought you must wrestle with alone. This isn't wishful thinking or spiritual bypassing. This is recognition of how divine intelligence actually operates in the practical affairs of human life. This shift in perspective creates what can only be described as a complete reversal in your relationship with problems and challenges. Instead of seeing difficulties as evidence that you're failing or that life is hard, you begin to recognize them as invitations to witness the power of divine love in action. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to practice release. Every problem becomes a chance to experience the miraculous solutions that emerge when you stop trying to fix everything with limited human wisdom. The journey of learning to cast burdens into divine fire transforms your entire nervous system. Your body begins to remember what it feels like to not carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Your sleep becomes deeper and more restorative because you're no longer taking your problems to bed with you. Your mind starts to clear of the constant mental chatter that comes from trying to solve everything through analysis and worry. If you've experienced that profound sense of liberation that comes when you finally release a burden you've been carrying, that moment when you stopped wrestling with a problem and truly gave it to a higher power, share burden released in the comments. I'd love to hear about your experience with this sacred law of release. What's particularly powerful about this release process during sleep programming is how it creates the perfect conditions for abundance affirmations to take root. When your consciousness is no longer cluttered with anxious thoughts and fearful projections, your subconscious becomes like a crystal-clear pool that perfectly reflects every abundance frequency it encounters. Now, I want to explore this consuming fire more deeply because it represents the transformational heart of the entire release process. When you cast your cares into what Joseph Murphy called the consuming fire of divine love, something truly miraculous happens. Your problems don't just get temporarily set aside or pushed down into some hidden corner of your mind. They undergo a fundamental alchemical transformation, a complete change in their essential nature. Think about what happens when fire meets paper. The paper doesn't just disappear, it's transformed into something entirely different. Its very molecular structure changes. In the same way, when you cast your financial worries, your career concerns, your relationship struggles into this divine fire, they don't simply vanish. They're transformed from burdens into blessings, from obstacles into opportunities, from problems into possibilities. This transformation creates what can only be described as a complete reversal in your relationship with challenges. Instead of seeing difficulties as evidence that something has gone wrong or that you're being punished, you begin recognizing them as sacred invitations to witness divine intelligence in action. The very situations that once caused you anxiety become the stages upon which miracles unfold when properly released to higher wisdom. Behind the scenes of this reversal lies one of the most beautiful aspects of spiritual law, the understanding that problems aren't sent to test you, but to transform you. When you stop fighting against what is and start surrendering it to divine love, every challenge becomes an opportunity for deeper awakening. Every burden becomes a doorway to greater freedom. Every limitation becomes an invitation to expansion. The journey of learning to cast your cares into this consuming fire often surprises people with its immediate impact on their nervous system. Your body has been carrying the physiological effects of worry. Tense muscles, shallow breathing, disrupted digestion, compromised immunity, often for years without realizing the toll it's taking. But when you truly release these burdens, your entire physical system begins to remember what it feels like to exist without constant tension. This physiological shift creates the optimal conditions for sleep programming because your body and mind are no longer broadcasting the frequency of stress and struggle. Your entire being becomes receptive to new impressions, new possibilities, new patterns of abundance that simply couldn't take root in soil cluttered with the rocks and debris of worry. What makes this approach so revolutionary is how it completely sidesteps what Joseph Murphy called the quicksand of human reasoning, that treacherous mental terrain where the harder you struggle to solve problems through analysis and worry, the deeper you sink into overwhelm and paralysis. Have you noticed how analyzing a financial challenge often creates more confusion rather than clarity? How weighing all the options sometimes leaves you more uncertain than when you began? This quicksand effect happens because the human mind simply wasn't designed to carry the full weight of life's complexities. When you attempt to figure everything out through mental gymnastics, when you rehearse worst-case scenarios in an attempt to prepare for them, when you constantly replay past mistakes trying to extract lessons, you're not creating solutions. You're creating suffering. You're sinking deeper into mental quicksand that exhausts your energy without moving you forward. The hidden truth about this accumulated mental weight reveals why so many intelligent, capable, well-meaning people find themselves stuck in cycles of financial stress despite their best efforts. They've been trying to carry loads that were never meant for human shoulders, attempting to solve problems through mental calculations that only create more problems, wrestling with challenges that dissolve the moment they're placed in the right hands. Joseph Murphy understood this principle deeply when he wrote about the divine delegation, the recognition that our role isn't to figure everything out, but to place our challenges in hands infinitely more capable than our own. This isn't spiritual bypassing or irresponsibility. It's the profound wisdom that some burdens simply cannot be resolved through human effort alone, no matter how intelligent or determined we might be. When you truly grasp this principle, sleep becomes not just a time for physical restoration, but a sacred opportunity for burden release. Instead of taking your problems to bed with you, mentally rehearsing them as you try to fall asleep, you consciously place them in divine hands before your head touches the pillow. You enter sleep unburdened, unencumbered, free to receive the abundant programming that will transform your consciousness throughout the night. If you felt that profound relief that comes when you finally stop struggling with a problem and truly surrender it to higher wisdom, share "Quicksand Escaped" in the comments. I'd love to hear about that moment when you realize some burdens simply cannot be carried through human effort alone. Now I want to reveal the specific spiritual mechanism that makes this burden casting so remarkably effective. When you truly feel the weight of everything you've been carrying alone, when you acknowledge the exhaustion that comes from trying to be the general manager of the universe, you become ready to discover what Joseph Murphy meant when he taught people to cast the burden on the Christ within. This isn't poetic imagery or comforting religious language. This is the exact spiritual mechanism by which the invisible realm transforms problems into visible good. The impact of understanding this mechanism cannot be overstated. Most people have been conditioned to believe that problems are solved through human effort, that challenges are overcome through strategy and willpower, that difficulties are conquered through persistence and determination. But this spiritual mechanism operates according to completely different principles. When you cast a burden on the Christ within, that divine intelligence that dwells at the center of your being, you activate a transformation process that works beyond the limitations of human reasoning. This Christ within is not a religious concept, but a practical spiritual reality. It represents the aspect of your consciousness that remains connected to infinite intelligence, that sees solutions invisible to your worried mind, that has access to resources your analytical thinking couldn't imagine. When you deliberately place your burdens in the hands of this inner Christ, you're not avoiding responsibility. You're delegating to the only intelligence qualified to handle infinite complexity with perfect wisdom. The journey of learning to use this spiritual mechanism transforms your entire relationship with problems and challenges. Instead of immediately jumping into analysis and worry when difficulties arise, you begin to practice conscious delegation. You acknowledge the situation, feel the weight, if it's there, and then deliberately transfer the burden to the Christ within, knowing that this divine aspect of your being will begin working immediately to transform the situation from the inside out. What's particularly powerful about this mechanism during sleep programming is how it creates the perfect conditions for miraculous solutions to emerge. When your conscious mind releases its grip on problems and stops trying to figure everything out through mental effort, space opens for divine intelligence to work. Your sleeping hours become like a holy laboratory where the Christ within transforms every burden you've surrendered into stepping stones toward greater abundance and joy. Behind the scenes of this spiritual mechanism lies a profound reordering of priorities. Most people approach problems by asking, "What can I do to fix this?" But the Christ within approaches challenges by asking, "How can this situation be transformed to reveal greater good than would have been possible?" Without it, this shift in perspective doesn't just solve problems, it transmutes them into blessings that exceed anything you could have created through human effort alone. The visualization technique that makes this burden casting most effective involves seeing yourself standing before what can only be described as the altar of divine fire. Close your eyes and see yourself standing before this sacred altar. Not a physical structure in some distant temple, but the seat of transformative power that exists within the deepest chamber of your own consciousness. As you stand in this sacred inner space, you begin to see with perfect clarity all the burdens you've been carrying. They appear not as abstract concepts, but as actual weights you can gather in your hands, the debts that have haunted your sleep, the failures that replay in your mind, the fears that constrict your breathing, the shame that whispers you're not enough. All of these begin to take visible form in this inner vision. The hidden truth that emerges in this moment will transform your entire understanding of problems and challenges. These burdens that have felt so real, so heavy, so permanent in your physical experience appear in spiritual sight as what they truly are, illusions without any true substance. They're like shadows that only seem solid until light shines directly on them, like mirages that dissolve when you get close enough to see clearly. As you stand before this altar of divine fire, gathering these burdens that now appear so insubstantial in the light of truth, you notice something beautiful beginning to materialize. An altar appears before you, not made of stone or wood, but constructed from pure spiritual fire that radiates warmth without burning, light without blinding. This is the altar of spirit where the most profound transformations occur, where human problems meet divine solutions, where the impossible becomes inevitable. The impact of placing your burdens upon this altar is immediate and undeniable. The moment these weights touch the surface of divine fire, they begin to dissolve, not into nothingness, but into their original essence, neutral spiritual substance that can be reformed into whatever divine intelligence knows you truly need. The debts transform into opportunities for increased income. The failures reshape themselves into wisdom that guides future success. The fears dissolve into faith that attracts protection and provision. This transformation happens not through your effort or understanding, but through the natural action of divine fire when it contacts illusion. Just as physical fire transforms wood into warmth and light, spiritual fire transforms problems into blessings, challenges into opportunities, burdens into stepping stones. You don't need to understand how this works. You only need to place the burden on the altar and speak the words that activate this divine mechanism. If you've experienced that moment of transformation where a burden placed on the spiritual altar returned to you as an unexpected blessing, share divine alchemy in the comments. I'm deeply curious about these moments when problems placed in higher hands return as gifts you never could have imagined. The journey to using this altar of divine fire transforms your entire approach to difficulties. Instead of trying to solve problems through mental analysis or emotional processing, you begin to practice conscious placement. You acknowledge what needs to be transformed. Visualize placing it on the altar of spirit and speak the words that Joseph Murphy taught. I cast this burden on the Christ within, and I go free. These aren't just comforting words. They're the exact spiritual formula that activates transformation. When you speak them with genuine release, with real surrender, something shifts immediately in your energy field. The burden is no longer yours to carry because you've placed it in hands infinitely more capable than your own. As the divine fire consumes what you've surrendered, as those illusions of lack and limitation dissolve into their original spiritual substance, you begin to feel something extraordinary stirring within your consciousness. Behind the scenes of this release, a profound metamorphosis begins to take place. Picture golden, luminous wings of abundance slowly unfurling from your back. Not physical wings, but the spiritual appendages of your true divine nature that have been folded and hidden beneath the weight of worldly concerns. These wings shimmer with the light of infinite possibility, radiate with the warmth of divine love, and pulse with the rhythm of eternal supply. They've been there all along, waiting for the moment when you would finally release enough weight to allow them to spread. The hidden truth about these wings of abundance reveals why the burden-casting process is so essential to financial transformation. You cannot soar while carrying the weight of human reasoning and struggle. You cannot rise into the realm of miraculous solutions while anchored to problems through worry and fear. But the moment you truly surrender these weights to divine intelligence, the moment you experience genuine release, these spiritual wings naturally unfold and begin to lift you above everything that once seemed to bind you. The impact of this elevation transforms your entire perspective on life's challenges. As you're lifted higher by these golden wings, as you rise into what can only be described as the realm of spiritual truth, you begin to see your circumstances from a completely different vantage point. The problems that loomed so large when you were walking in their shadows now appear surprisingly small and manageable from this elevated perspective. The obstacles that seemed insurmountable when you were pressed against them now reveal themselves as temporary illusions that block only those who haven't learned to rise above them. This journey to higher ground isn't just a comforting visualization. It's actual spiritual ascension that changes how you make decisions, how you respond to challenges, and how you navigate the practical affairs of daily life. From this elevated consciousness, you begin to operate from wisdom rather than worry, from inspiration rather than desperation, from faith rather than fear. Your choices align with divine timing because you can see the bigger picture that remains invisible from ground level. What's particularly revelatory about reaching this elevated perspective is how it completely reframes your understanding of everything you've struggled against. From this height of spiritual clarity, you see with perfect certainty that lack never actually had any power over you. It was only an illusion that seemed real when you were walking through its shadows. You recognize that fear never had true dominion in your life. It was only a temporary visitor that gained influence when you forgot your divine nature. You understand that no earthly circumstance, no matter how challenging or persistent, ever held your true self captive. These were only temporary experiences that your eternal spirit moved through while learning and growing. This recognition creates what can only be described as a complete identity transformation. You stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles against circumstances and start recognizing yourself as someone who rises above them. You cease identifying as a victim of economic conditions and begin embodying your role as a spiritual being who operates according to higher laws. You quit wrestling with problems and start dancing with solutions that flow naturally when you maintain this elevated perspective. Joseph Murphy often shared with his students that this winged consciousness wasn't just metaphorical, but represented the actual mechanics of transformation. When you release the gravitational pull of problems through genuine surrender, your consciousness naturally rises to its proper altitude, not through effort or striving, but through allowing its inherent buoyancy to express itself when no longer weighed down. The revelations that continue to unfold from this airborne view of life reshape every aspect of your relationship with abundance. You begin to understand that prosperity isn't something you have to fight for or compete for. It's something you ascend into when you remember how to use your spiritual wings. You realize that financial freedom doesn't come from working harder at ground level, but from rising into the dimension where limitation simply doesn't exist. What makes this elevation so powerful during sleep programming is how it aligns with your brain's natural tendency to process information hierarchically. When viewing challenges from an elevated perspective, your sleeping mind automatically reorganizes problems into more manageable patterns, sees connections that weren't visible from ground level, and accesses solutions that transcend ordinary thinking. If you've experienced moments of this elevated perspective, those times when you suddenly saw your financial situation from a completely different vantage point and everything changed, share wings activated in the comments. I'm deeply interested in hearing about your experiences of rising above circumstances that once seemed to bind you. Now, I want to explore what happens in your physical body as this spiritual elevation unfolds, as your consciousness rises on those wings of abundance, as you settle into the knowing that divine intelligence handles all things perfectly. Your nervous system begins to release decades of accumulated tension. Your breath naturally deepens. That chronic background anxiety about money, about security, about whether you're doing enough or being enough, starts to dissolve into something far more supportive, a gentle knowing that you are held, you are seen, and you are provided for. The impact of this physiological transformation extends far beyond momentary relaxation. When your body is no longer consumed with producing stress hormones and maintaining defensive postures, tremendous energy becomes available for creativity, inspiration, and what can only be described as effortless demonstration. Your mind clears of the fog that comes from chronic worry, your intuition sharpens, and you begin to notice opportunities and solutions that were invisible when you were operating from survival mode. This journey from tension to release, from resistance to flow, naturally leads you into one of the most beautiful experiences available to human consciousness. As your body relaxes completely, as your muscles surrender their grip on old patterns of struggle, you begin to feel yourself floating on what can only be described as invisible currents of divine abundance. These aren't metaphorical currents, they're actual energetic streams of supply, support, and synchronicity that flow constantly through the invisible realm, waiting to carry anyone who learns how to align with their rhythm. The hidden truth about these divine currents reveals why some people seem to effortlessly attract opportunities while others struggle despite their best efforts. Those who flow with abundance have learned to stop swimming against these currents through force and willpower, and instead have discovered how to relax into the flow that wants to carry them exactly where they need to go. They've recognized that the universe isn't working against them. It's been trying to lift them all along. Joseph Murphy understood this principle deeply when he wrote about the law of non-resistance, the recognition that pushing against these currents creates the very turbulence that blocks their natural flow. He taught that prosperity moves toward those who learn to float rather than fight, to receive rather than reach, to allow rather than force. During sleep, when you rest in this awareness of being carried by invisible currents, your subconscious receives what can only be described as divine downloads. Solutions appear not through mental gymnastics, but through gentle inspiration. Opportunities align not through networking and manipulation, but through what feels like graceful synchronicity. Money flows not through desperate hustle, but through channels that seem to open effortlessly. What's particularly remarkable about floating on these currents is how it transforms your relationship with effort and achievement. Instead of straining and pushing to make things happen, you begin to understand what Joseph Murphy meant by effortless demonstration. You're lifted by wings of light to heights where miracles are normal, where synchronicities are commonplace, where the right people appear at the right time with the right resources in ways that feel almost choreographed by unseen intelligence. The journey from striving to receiving represents one of the most profound transformations available to human consciousness. It's the difference between swimming upstream against a powerful current and finally turning around to discover you've been fighting the very force that wanted to carry you home. When you make decisions from this place of floating surrender, every choice becomes an expression of abundance rather than a hedge against scarcity. What's particularly fascinating is how this inner shift begins to reshape your external world almost immediately. People respond differently to your energy. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. Resources that seemed scarce begin appearing from unexpected directions. As you float on these divine currents, as you feel yourself being carried by invisible streams of abundance that require no effort or striving on your part, you arrive at perhaps the most pivotal moment of this entire transformation process. It's time to speak what Joseph Murphy called the final word of release. Not just as an intellectual exercise or hopeful prayer, but as a decree that resonates through every fiber of your being with the authority of absolute truth. Take a deep breath and speak these words slowly, deliberately, with the full weight of your spiritual recognition behind them. I cast this burden on the Christ within, and I go free. Don't just say these words, let them move through your consciousness like sound waves rippling through still water, reaching every cell, every thought pattern, every buried fear or doubt that has been holding you captive to limitation. Feel the vibration of I go free, echoing in the chambers of your heart, reverberating through your nervous system, announcing to every aspect of your being that the old patterns of struggle and worry are now officially dissolved. Behind the scenes of speaking this final declaration, something extraordinary happens in the invisible realm that most people never realize they're activating. The moment these words leave your lips, with genuine surrender and faith, celestial mechanisms begin to engage that operate beyond the laws of ordinary cause and effect. You're not just releasing personal burdens, you're triggering what can only be described as divine intervention in the practical affairs of your life. If you've felt the power of those currents beginning to carry you, that moment when you stopped swimming against the stream and finally surrendered to the flow that's been waiting to support you, share divine current activated in the comments. I'd love to hear how this surrender to the abundance flow is manifesting in your unique journey. The impact of this final release creates what can only be described as a divine opening. A moment when the barriers between your current circumstances and your highest possibilities become permeable. The financial challenges that seemed so solid and permanent begin to soften around the edges. The opportunities that were blocked by your own resistance start to become visible. The solutions that couldn't penetrate the fog of worry suddenly have clear pathways to reach you. This is where the journey takes its most magnificent turn, because now that you've released every burden that was weighing down your consciousness, now that you've spoken the words that activate divine intervention, the gates of divine supply begin to swing wide open. These aren't metaphorical gates or symbolic imagery. These are actual spiritual mechanisms that govern the flow of abundance from the invisible realm into visible form. And they've been waiting for your complete release to operate at full capacity. The hidden truth about these gates of divine supply reveals why burden-carrying blocks abundance so effectively. When you're clutching problems and wrestling with challenges through human effort alone, your hands are too full to receive what's trying to reach you. Your consciousness is too contracted by worry to perceive the gifts that surround you. Your energy field is too dense with resistance to allow the flow of divine provision. But the moment you truly cast every burden on the Christ within, your hands open, your consciousness expands, and your entire being becomes receptive to what's been waiting for you all along. What begins to pour forth through these opened gates defies ordinary understanding of how supply works. These are treasures that have been prepared for you since before the world began, not earned through struggle or achieved through merit, but held in divine storage, awaiting the moment when you would develop the spiritual capacity to receive them. Financial opportunities that seem to appear from nowhere, relationships that align with perfect timing, health improvements that exceed medical predictions, creative inspirations that feel downloaded from a higher source. All of these represent the overflow of abundance that becomes available when the gates are truly open. The revelations that emerge from this opening transform your entire understanding of your place in the cosmic order. You begin to realize that you're not struggling to get God's attention or competing for limited resources in a universe of scarcity. You discover that divine intelligence has been orchestrating abundance for you all along, preparing custom solutions for challenges you haven't even encountered yet, arranging meetings with people who will change your life in ways you never could have planned. Joseph Murphy taught that these gates of supply represent the junction point between the invisible and visible realms, the precise mechanism by which spiritual substance takes material form in your experience. He understood that the gate wasn't locked from the outside, but from the inside, by your own resistance, doubt, and burden carrying. The key to prosperity wasn't finding some external secret formula, but releasing the inner blocks that had been preventing what was already yours from reaching you. What you're experiencing isn't random cosmic generosity or unpredictable divine whim. You've activated what can only be described as spiritual law in its purest form. And this law operates with a precision and perfection that exceeds anything in the physical universe. Spiritual law cannot fail because it's not subject to human opinion, economic conditions, or external circumstances. It does not delay because it operates beyond the limitations of time and space. The instant you align your word with divine truth, the instant your decree harmonizes with the fundamental frequencies of creation itself, invisible gates don't gradually creak open. They fly wide with the force of absolute spiritual authority. This revelation transforms your entire understanding of timing and manifestation. Most people approach abundance work with the unconscious assumption that they're making requests to a distant deity who might or might not respond according to mysterious divine will. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. When you speak from complete alignment with spiritual law, when your words carry the frequency of unwavering faith rather than desperate hope, you're not petitioning for favor. You're activating automatic universal response. The impact of recognizing this precision creates what can only be described as a quantum leap in your manifestation abilities. Instead of wondering if your prayers will be answered or hoping your affirmations might work eventually, you begin to understand that your word, when spoken with complete faith, carries what Joseph Murphy called the weight of heaven itself. Your decree becomes like a royal seal pressed into warm wax, irrevocable, eternal, impossible to revoke or reverse. This isn't spiritual arrogance or human presumption. This is recognition of the divine authority that operates through aligned consciousness. When your word harmonizes completely with spiritual truth, when your declaration flows from that Christ within rather than from personality or ego, heaven itself backs your voice. Angels are dispatched to fulfill your spoken word. Invisible forces begin rearranging circumstances to match your decree. The very fabric of reality begins to reshape itself around what you've declared with unwavering faith. If you've witnessed this automatic response of spiritual law in your own life, those moments when your aligned words seem to trigger immediate shifts in your reality, share spiritual law activated in the comments. I'd love to hear about your experiences with this divine precision that exceeds anything in the physical universe. The journey of learning to speak with this kind of spiritual authority transforms not just your financial experience, but your entire relationship with life itself. Your decisions begin flowing from certainty rather than confusion. Your choices align with divine timing because your word creates the timing. Your opportunities multiply because your declarations open pathways that were previously invisible or inaccessible. What's particularly powerful about understanding this royal authority of aligned speech is how it eliminates the anxiety and uncertainty that normally accompany manifestation work. When you truly grasp that your word is law in the spiritual realm, when you recognize that heaven must respond to decrees spoken in complete faith, you stop wondering if your good will come and start preparing to receive it. You cease questioning whether you're worthy and start positioning yourself to handle the abundance that your word has already set in motion. The revelations that emerge from wielding this spiritual authority often surprise people with their immediacy and their magnitude. Solutions that seem to require months of planning suddenly crystallize overnight. Financial opportunities that appeared impossible begin manifesting with perfect timing. Relationships, health improvements, and creative breakthroughs align in ways that demonstrate the comprehensive nature of divine response to aligned speech. Joseph Murphy understood this principle deeply when he described what he called the royal secret, the recognition that properly aligned speech carries the same creative power that spoke the universe into existence. Your word, when harmonized with divine truth, isn't just positive thinking or hopeful affirmation. It's spiritual law in action, setting in motion forces that must manifest in tangible form with the same certainty that night follows day. Now, I want to reveal something that will transform your entire relationship with money itself. Once you've activated this spiritual authority through aligned speech, once you've witnessed the precision with which universal law responds to your declarations, you're ready for what might be the most revolutionary recognition in your financial journey, the complete revelation of money's true nature and its proper relationship to you. Here's the hidden truth that changes everything about your financial reality. Money is not your master demanding that you serve. Its requirements, bow to its scarcity, or exhaust yourself trying to earn its approval. Money is your obedient servant, waiting patiently and eagerly for your command, ready to flow in whatever direction your spiritually aligned consciousness directs it. When your tongue aligns with this truth rather than the world's lies about financial struggle, money responds instantly and joyfully, not reluctantly or conditionally. Behind the scenes of this master-servant reversal lies one of the most profound shifts available to human consciousness around abundance. Most people spend their entire lives in unconscious slavery to money, letting their bank balance determine their mood, allowing financial pressures to dictate their decisions, permitting economic conditions to control their sense of security and self-worth. They speak about money with fear, worry, and reverence, not realizing that every word of limitation they utter reinforces money's false authority over their lives. But when you awaken with consciousness rich in divine supply, when you've been re-scripted by golden rain throughout the night, you naturally begin to understand what Joseph Murphy discovered decades ago, that your spiritual authority over money is absolute when exercised from genuine alignment with divine truth. This isn't presumption or spiritual arrogance. This is recognition of the natural hierarchy that exists between consciousness and form, between spirit and matter, between divine intelligence and its material expressions. The transformation that occurs when you truly grasp this servant-master dynamic is immediate and unmistakable. Instead of approaching your finances with anxiety and limitation, you begin to address money with the calm confidence of someone giving instructions to a faithful employee. Instead of worrying about whether there will be enough, you start directing money to appear where and when you need it. Instead of feeling controlled by economic circumstances, you recognize yourself as the spiritual authority that money naturally obeys when commanded from genuine faith. This shift reveals why one sentence spoken with complete spiritual authority has the power to transform years of financial struggle into flowing abundance. When you declare with unwavering conviction, "Money is not my master, it is my obedient servant," You're not just making a positive affirmation or hoping to feel better about your situation. You're invoking what can only be described as divine law, a fundamental principle that governs the relationship between consciousness and form throughout the entire universe. The impact of speaking this sentence with genuine spiritual authority, rather than desperate hope, creates what can only be described as instant realignment in the unseen realm. Money, which has been responding to your unconscious commands of fear and limitation, suddenly receives new instructions from a consciousness that remembers its true spiritual rank. The servant that seemed rebellious and withholding was actually just following orders it received through your worried thoughts and scarcity-based speech patterns. What makes this master-servant recognition so transformative is how it eliminates the emotional charge around money that creates so much suffering and self-sabotage. When you truly understand that money is designed to serve your highest good, rather than test your worthiness, you stop taking financial challenges personally and start treating them as simple matters of giving clearer directions to your obedient servant. If you've experienced that profound moment of realization when you suddenly understood that money isn't your master but your servant, when you felt the relationship completely invert in your consciousness, share "servant of abundance" in the comments. I'm deeply curious about these moments of profound revelation that transform our entire relationship with financial energy. Now, I want to explore what may be the most empowering transformation in all of spiritual development around prosperity, the complete shift from asking to authorizing in every aspect of your financial life. This isn't just a change in vocabulary or a subtle adjustment in how you phrase your desires. This represents a fundamental elevation in consciousness from the position of spiritual beggar to the role of divine administrator. When you truly make this shift, you stop approaching abundance with the energy of "please give me what I need," and begin operating with the authority of "I now authorize the release of what's already mine." Behind the scenes of this asking to authorizing transformation lies one of the most profound recognitions available to human consciousness. You were never designed to plead for what belongs to you by divine inheritance. Every time you ask for abundance as if you might be denied, every moment you approach prosperity with uncertainty about whether you deserve it, you're unconsciously diminishing your spiritual authority and operating from a false identity of separation from your source. The declaration that changes everything is both simple and revolutionary. I no longer ask, I authorize. But this isn't just different wording for the same old hoping and wishing. This is a complete reversal of your relationship to divine supply. When you authorize rather than ask, you're speaking from heaven rather than from hunger, operating as an oracle of divine law rather than responding to the mood of your bank. Balance. The hidden power of this authorization shift reveals why some people's abundance affirmations seem to carry immediate weight, while others feel hollow despite similar words. It's not just what you say, it's the spiritual position from which you're speaking. When you ask, you're implying that someone else has the power to grant or deny your good. When you authorize, you're recognizing that divine law has already established your abundance, and you're simply releasing what's been held in spiritual escrow. Joseph Murphy understood this principle deeply when he wrote about the divine authorization. That moment when you stop petitioning for favor and start commanding from divine authority. He recognized that this shift represents a complete transformation in spiritual identity. You're no longer the outsider hoping to be let in. You're the rightful heir, claiming what's already been prepared for your enjoyment. This transformation in spiritual position naturally leads to a complete elevation in how your voice carries authority when you speak about financial matters. Your voice must begin to reflect what Joseph Murphy called divine certainty, the same unshakable confidence that the great spiritual masters demonstrated when they spoke words of power that transformed reality. This isn't arrogance or presumption, it's alignment with your true spiritual identity as one authorized to speak with the authority of heaven itself. Think about the decisions you've made around money throughout your life, the opportunities you've embraced or avoided, the risks you've taken or declined, the patterns of earning, spending, saving, and investing that have shaped your financial reality. None of these were random choices. They all emerged from your perception of your relationship to abundance, either as a petitioner hoping to receive or as an authorizer activating what's already yours. The journey of stepping into this divine authorization often surprises people with how naturally their external circumstances begin to mirror their shifted identity. Opportunities that once seemed closed suddenly open with remarkable ease. Resources that appeared limited start flowing from unexpected directions. People who never noticed your value begin responding to your energy with newfound respect and recognition. What makes this approach so revolutionary is how it completely inverts the conventional understanding of manifestation. Most people believe they must first prove their worthiness through struggle and sacrifice before they can receive abundance, but divine authorization works from the opposite principle, that receiving comes before proving, that inheritance precedes earning, that authority is your birthright rather than your achievement. This profound shift leads us to what may be the most liberating realization in the entire abundance journey. The recognition that you aren't seeking a formula for prosperity that exists outside yourself. You are the formula. You aren't hoping to eventually overflow with abundance. You overflow now because overflow is your essential nature when aligned with divine truth. The words are simple, but they carry the concentrated power of this entire journey. I am the formula. I overflow now. The profound truth embedded in this declaration reveals the deepest secret of abundance consciousness. You are not seeking a formula for prosperity that exists outside yourself. You are the formula. You are not hoping to eventually overflow with abundance. You overflow now because overflow is your essential nature when aligned with divine truth. Joseph Murphy often shared with his students that this ultimate recognition wasn't just a pleasant affirmation, but the fundamental reality of their being. When you declare, I am the formula, with genuine spiritual authority, you're not making a wishful statement about what you hope to become. You're acknowledging what has always been true about your essential nature. The impact of speaking these words with complete conviction creates what can only be described as instant identification with your highest spiritual identity. This isn't gradual growth or slow development. This is immediate recognition of what has always been true about your essential nature. The moment you declare, I am the formula, I overflow now with genuine spiritual authority, every tomb of limitation that has held your consciousness captive begins to crack open. If you've experienced that profound moment of recognition, that instant when you suddenly realized you weren't seeking something outside yourself, but remembering what you've always been, share I am the formula in the comments. I'd love to connect with those who've glimpsed this ultimate truth about their divine identity. If you've made it all the way to this moment, if you've journeyed with me from the very beginning through to this recognition of yourself as the abundance formula, there's something profound happening. Here, your presence wasn't coincidence. Your soul was ready for this level of spiritual authority. I create these meditations because I know there are people like you out there, Souls who are ready to move beyond ordinary approaches to abundance and step into the profound spiritual laws that govern true prosperity. If this content has stirred something in you, if you felt that inner knowing that says, yes, this is how abundance really works, I'd love for you to join our community by subscribing. This isn't just spiritual entertainment, this is practical mysticism that can transform your entire financial reality when applied consistently. The connection we've built over these minutes together tells me that a simple like on this video would help this message reach other souls who are ready for the same awakening. There's something beautiful about knowing that your engagement helps expand the circle of people discovering their divine authority over abundance. Write in the comments, I am the living formula, because I want to acknowledge those who went the distance, who stayed present for the complete transmission rather than just sampling pieces here and there. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into the practical application of these principles in your daily life. It's the perfect continuation of what we've explored together, showing you exactly how to maintain this formula consciousness when external circumstances try to pull you back into old patterns. Click and continue with me over there, because your abundance journey has only just begun.